Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and this is Dominions 4, Thrones of Ascension, Byzantine, Pythium. And we are finally going to start the game. You'll note that where we are on the map is a pretty decent position, actually. It's right about, It's right about in the middle, but we are close to water, which will help with our Varangians who have the sailing ability. We are right next to a throne, and it's a mountain pass, but we're there, and we are close to another 2 thrones, and our disciple, Marignan, has 3 thrones in the general vicinity of them as well. I don't currently know where my enemies are, but I do think that overall this is a pretty good position to be in on this map. We have some mountains here for good resources, some forests, some swamps. The only thing we're lacking, I guess, is plains. But our home province is a plain, so that's pretty awesome. We got mountain here, mountain here, mountain here, forest here, and this is plains, which is great, and then we have swamp. So we should have a pretty decent cross-section of income and production for our first castle, but really the goal is to get another castle out as soon as possible. Then as you come down to the south, we have this water, which is splitting everything up and splitting us up with our disciple Marignan. And then you have north of us, I guess, you have this lake, some mountains. It's some more of a thin region. We have 2 big seas. There's an island there in the middle. Oh, it is its own province. Okay, that's cool. And, oh, Marignan has 4 thrones near it. There's this one down here as well. Little kind of snowy, mountainy area here, although it really depends on the... Like, this isn't going to be snowy in the game because it's going to be under my dominion probably, which is a warm dominion. But this is a great map. And I'm trying to make it so that you can see, we could see it. Okay. Is this, okay, so this is vertically full. So if I go up here, everything that you see in the picture is the vertical length of the map. Now it's a little bit overlapped horizontally, but still, beautiful map. Very nice. Zoop. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for the enthusiastic reception and for all of you who signed up to have your names in the LP. Just so you know, I will be doing it first come, first serve, so you can get kind of a general idea of where you fall on the list if you look at the comments of the first video and sort it by date. That's not going to be 100% accurate because some people responded to my comment, so they're not going to be part of that sorting, but trust me, I've tried very hard to be fair and make it everything first come, first serve. Right now we have about 35, 40 people who've signed up, so if you're one of the later people, please don't worry if you don't hear your name for a while. That's working as intended. That's how it's set up. So what else is going on? I want to talk in this episode about the nation, about the troops, and a little bit about myself with regards to Byzantium and the history of Byzantium and the Byzantine Empire. Like my Shinuyama campaign, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the history and cool events in Byzantine history. I'm saying the word history too much, but I will be giving information on that throughout the game. Obviously, I'm not going to let it slow down the gameplay, except for these first 2 videos, but it'll be in and out throughout that. Also, as I mentioned before, I'm using a couple mods: Worthy Heroes, No Independent Recruit, and Mobility. I've found them to be useful in my previous LPs. There's also another mod I'm considering called Joe's Spell Killer. The purpose of this mod is to prevent the AI from casting kind of ridiculous spells in battle that aren't very helpful. However, it does this by a method where it removes the capacity to cast those spells. And so I like the idea of it. I'm not particularly fond of the implementation. I think there might be a more, what's the word I'm looking for? A more elegant way of doing it by creating a mod that just causes the AI not to cast those spells, but still leaves those spells in the game to be cast. And Joe might have even fixed that already and done that, I'm not sure. But if I find later in the game that I'm starting to get annoyed by my giant communions casting Phantom Warrior or something like that, I'm going to definitely install that mod. Though I'm going to give the game a chance first. Okay, so we are starting here in Obolshin. This is our capital. We have our first commander, who is a centurion. A centurion is an 80 leadership commander. I'll get into more detail on that. And we also start with our first scout, who in this case is an ambassador, who is a spy and stealthy. So like our Ulm illuminated ones and members of the second tier, these folks can instill unrest in large numbers if that's what you want to do. I actually am going to be using him right now as a scout, but my plans are eventually to have this particular scout go to Ulm and be scouting out the Ulmish lands as soon as I determine where those lands are. And the reason for this, you might be wondering, you know, why is Ulm important, is because I'm going to be naming this gentleman Jay. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because Jay is going to play a big role here. He is going to go to Ulm as an ambassador. Now, I don't know what is going to befall him there, because that will be determined by this game, but eventually, years and years and years in the future, when Ulm becomes late age Ulm of the Black Forest, Jay will be Undying Jay, the vampire count. So I'm trying to build, at the request of Undying Jay, I'm trying to build in a little bit of long-term history here for him. So he will be our first scout, and we will send him over to the throne, I believe, first. Or we will not, actually, because we cannot get there. We will go here instead. Now, our first centurion, our first commander, and remember, we cannot have prophets because we have a disciple, but our first commander is going to be Monkey 2X, who was the first person who signed up right after the video was posted. So welcome to the team, Monkey 2X. And let's talk a little bit about our buildings. We have the Hall of Arts, which enables the recruitment of the Theurg Artisan and nothing else. We have the Alchemy Guild House, which gives us the Pyrote and the Imperial Alchemist, along with a fire and water gem per turn. We have Sancta Sophia, with 2 Astral Pearls and 1 Air Gem, and it enables recruitment of the Emperor, the Varangian Guard, and the Varangian Captain. So those are our only units that are capital only. That would be the Theurg Artisan, which can only be recruited here, though the regular Theurgs can be recruited anywhere. The Alchemist, the Varangian Captain, and the Emperor. So everybody from here to here can be recruited anywhere. As far as troops, only the Pyrote and the Varangian Guard are capital only. Everyone else, including our Sacred Battle Vestals, are recruit anywhere. Now, I fully believe that a mod is the property of its designer, and it should be as they want it to be, although I have suggested to Burnsaber, the designer of this mod, that it would be welcome to have a cavalry commander to lead the 2 different cavalry units, because it seems interesting to me that we have only infantry commanders but 2 cavalry units. So my question would be, should I lead them with independent cavalry commanders, which granted are very common, or, you know, is there maybe this guy moves fast enough, like he moves 310. So actually he moves faster than these guys, so it's possible that an infantry commander can command them, and at least on the strategic map they'll move just fine. On the battle map, obviously, the commander will have to stay behind. So let's go through it. Starting with commanders, we have the Ambassador, who we've already talked about. He is a scout/spy with a dagger. We have the Cultist, who is a unique unit. It is an assassin with a magical weapon, a Serpent Chris, which causes death, poison, and is armor piercing. So low damage, but excellent poison. I think this means 35 poison damage a turn, so pretty much it'll kill anything. He's also a heretic, however, so he counts as a priest of level 1 preaching against your dominion wherever he is, and that also means enemy dominion. So if I move him to an enemy's dominion, he's preaching against them. He has a 10% chance of 1 water, 1 death, 1 nature, or 1 blood. Water we have plenty of. Blood I'm not going to be using, I don't care much about, but it would be neat to get death or nature to help with site searching, although by the time we were able to get a guy with one of these, we'll probably have an independent nature caster or be able to summon someone who can do it too. Because we're talking a 10% chance of one of these 4, so it's really a 1 in 40 chance of getting nature or death. Or 1 in 20 of getting either of them. 1 in 40 of getting a specific one. He is also poison resistant, but otherwise lackluster. So if we were going to use a cultist as an assassin, we're probably going to want to give him some kind of defense boost. And I'm not going to read the description out loud. You can always pause the screen, of course, and read it yourself. Our main frontline or low troop level commander, and I say low troop level kind of tongue-in-cheek because he has 80 leadership, which is fantastic. You remember in Ulm, our basic commanders, I believe, had 40. He's just a slightly above average in all respects, except for strength and magic resistance. but the average human has 10 hit points and he has 12, so that's pretty decent. Good morale, good defense, slightly good attack. I think it's just pretty good stats for a Roman type commander, in the sense that they did focus a bit more on defense, I think. Short sword, so like a a scutati. Someone's going to correct me in the comments, but I think it's a scutati, plate cuirass, and a legionary helmet. So these guys in armament are much closer to Roman legions than they are late Byzantine armies, which were theme-based armies with a lot of cavalry, and they had rounded shields. They didn't have these big tower shields that the Romans did. Then we have the Legatus Legionis, which is the next step up. They have 120 leadership, and their defense is 1 higher, though I'm not sure why. They have the same stuff. Other than that, they are another hit point higher, bit more protection, bit more attack skill, and a bit more strength. So they're decent, heavy leadership. They give +2 morale for 4 squads. The Centurion gives +1 morale for 3. So that's where that stands. Now we get into our mages. This is a unique unit to this nation. It is a Theurg Communicant. It is a sacred unit, but it is not a priest. It basically is a communion slave. What that means is there's a spell in the Thaumaturgy path called Communion Slave, which allows an astral mage to become a slave and lend his power to the Communion Master. Well, these units don't have any astral magic, but they automatically, upon entering the battle, cast the spell Communion Slave. So they basically, if you mass these guys, they make your Communion Masters stronger. Other than that, they just kind of stand around and do nothing. So keeping them alive, however, is very important, because if you lose them, you lose the power of your Communion. Then there's the Theurg Acolyte, which I will consider the low-level mage of the nation. It has 1 astral, 1 priest level, and a 100% chance of either fire, air, or water. So these guys can be Communion Masters in a pinch, but they're better off, I guess, being Communion Slaves and Researchers, although this nation has even better Researchers. And as you can tell, they're not very sturdy. If you look at their stats, they're 1 arrow to the face, and these guys are pretty much down. So I'll probably be using Acolytes, if I even recruit them at all, as mostly Communion Slaves. Next we have the regular Theurg. 2 astral, 2 priest level, and 100% chance of +2 to fire, air, and water. These guys will be my main battle mages. They will be assigned to every army. They will be the Communion Masters. They will be casting high-level fire, air, and water spells, depending on what their inclination is. They also have a forge bonus, which is fine. Oh, sorry. It's a negative forge bonus. They are inefficient when forging magic items, so we will not be using them to forge, but they are fortune tellers and can prevent bad events. So they're very useful. 13 research, but again, this nation has a better researcher. Then, this is a really cool mechanic, and I'm not sure how Burnsaber made it work, but there's the Emperor unit. You can only have 1 Emperor at any given time. He starts with 5 Varangian guards. He's 4 level astral, 3 level priest, and up to 100% chance of 3 in fire, air, or water. So you're kind of rolling the dice. If I want a particular one, I'm going to have to hope for it. He also has a magical weapon called the Scepter of Authority, which has a range? No, I guess it's not. So we're not going to be using him in battle in that sense. But this will be our main Communion Master in the game. They're very expensive, 500 gold, 120 resources, 2 turns to recruit. Now what happens is, if I recruit one of these and move him around, and then I try to recruit another one, he'll simply move back to the capital. But it'll cost just as much as if I recruited a new one. So that's kind of stupid and expensive. But if an Emperor should ever die for whatever reason, I can then recruit another one, and it will be a new unit with new magic paths and everything. Next we have the Varangian Captain, who has a leadership of 80 and has a fear effect of 5, which is awesome, because usually you have to get the Horror Helm to get that, or be an undead or something. He has Sailing, which, as I mentioned earlier, will allow him to cross water provinces to attack land provinces on the other side. You can only cross 1 water province, and it doesn't matter, I don't think, if the water province belongs to you, or no one, or one of the enemies. He has a dual-wielding axes, which is really cool, but not historical. The historical Varangian Guard were actually held 2-handed battle axes and a chainmail hauberk. Historically, the Varangian Guard were originally from the Norse countries and Russia, the Rus, and they worked as mercenaries for the Byzantines. And then later on, historically, like around the time of the Crusades, they moved west, and you had Varangians that came from the Normans, England, some from Germany. And they were basically, if you imagine it, the Byzantines were in Greece and Turkey. So they were people of that ethnic background. They were smaller people, I guess, in this time period. And you had these people from these northern countries who had blonde hair, were very tall and strapping. And there's even in Anna Comnen's Alexiad, there's mention to how, they were tall as date palms or palm trees. So they really cut an impressive figure among the Byzantine court. And the reason why they existed was because, being mercenaries from faraway countries, they weren't involved in the internal politics that was all over the Byzantine court. They were loyal to the emperor, and the emperor only, because the emperor was the one who paid them. And so they didn't get involved in the internal political squabbles and struggles. Next, we have the Imperial Alchemist. This is a unit who has little magic in fire and water, and a 100% chance of one more of fire, water, earth, and a 10% chance of another fire, water, and earth. So you can conceivably get 3 fire, 3 water, or 2 earth on one of these guys, but probably you're not. Probably it's just going to be a mix of all 3. But they are an amazing researcher, and that's what I will use them for. They're also susceptible to fire and resistant to cold. I don't want to necessarily use these guys in battle ever, because they have a Pyros attack, which is area of effect, and will do more harm, equal amount of harm to my own guys as it will to the enemy. Their stats are also pretty low from a combat perspective, especially when you factor in their costs. They're mostly going to be used as researchers, and I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with their magic. Maybe I will involve them in battles if we need a little bit of earth, obviously, because they're our only main earth people, with the exception of our final unit, the Theurg Artisan. The Theurg Artisan has 1 holy and either fire, air, water, earth, or astral. So these guys could conceivably get 2 earth themselves, although it would be very rare in practice. You'd have to get the earth pick, which is 1 out of 5, and then you'd have to get another earth pick, which is 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10. So 1 out of 50. So 1 out of 50, 1 out of 250 of these guys will have 2 earth, and that is probably not something we want to bank on. But they have a forge bonus of 1 because they are artisans, and so they're going to be used by me to forge items. What makes them also cool is there are special items for this nation that I know about, but I can't unfortunately show you till we get our construction level up. They can only be forged by these guys because they require holy. So I'll definitely be recruiting a lot of these guys. It's going to be tough at the beginning because I'm going to have to choose between recruiting these guys and recruiting our alchemists, since they're both capital only, and these guys I need for research, and these guys I need for forging. Probably start with the alchemists. And then, of course, these 2 are capital only as well. I'll recruit an emperor as soon as I can afford it, because I feel it's weird that there isn't an emperor right at the beginning, because the empire needs an emperor, and a Varangian captain will come sooner than later. Now to the units. We have a slinger, cheap, worthless missile unit, good to mass and border provinces, but otherwise I probably won't be recruiting any of these guys. We have velites, which are the standard spear wielding but javelin throwing, which is important because javelins are awesome. Basic infantry. I'm going to be using a lot of these guys at the beginning because they are lower cost in resources than our higher guys, and they're still quite formidable. Like, I was able to, in my test game, take on heavy cavalry with these guys. Next we have the Ale Legionnaire. So this is basically a unit from another place. Even though this is Pythium, they're auxiliary troops. They're citizens from conquered lands, and they cost twice as many resources as the Velite, and they're obviously more defended as a result. But still, except for defense and protection, they have basic human 10 down the line. Then we have the Hastatus, which, if you're familiar with the Roman Republic armies, the Hastatus is the youngest man. They are not as good as the Principes or the Triarius, but they're still very decent light to medium infantry, 16 defense, which is great, 13 protection, otherwise standard human. Bit more morale, I think, than the Ale Legionnaire. Yeah, 11 morale. That's the big difference in the higher defense and protection. Still 10 hit points. Then the Principe, 11 hit points. Still high protection defense, bit more morale, bit more precision in attack. So they're elite troops is kind of how they're played out. And then the Triarius. Now, These guys should be the elites, the true elites, but unfortunately they have old age, which makes them not as good for this purpose because they have detriments to all of their stats, as you can see here. They're still formidable. They have 18 protection, first of all, which is awesome, but their defense is lower, their strength, their attack and precision. So I'll be using these guys, but I think I'm going to focus more on the other two simply because their old age really hurts them. But they do have Formation Fighter, which I do not believe... Yeah, they're the only ones that do. So they don't lose morale for being in a line, and they do have a good morale of 13, which puts them higher than everybody else. So in that sense, they're a strong, high defense unit that won't rout, probably pretty good against undead, keeping them away. Wouldn't want to use them against giants, so against Ashdod, probably not a good idea. But they do have a length 5 long spear. Here's going to be the mainstay of our forces, at least in the beginning. The Battle Vestal. Incredibly cheap to mass with low resources. They can be recruited anywhere, and they are sacred, so they'll benefit from my bless. They have no protection whatsoever, so it's certainly going to help me to cast protection on them if I can get a mage with nature, which I don't currently have. But for the most part, they are indeed formidable simply by my bless. And they're going to die. Don't get me wrong. They're going to die in quite a lot, but they're cheap and quick to mass, and I can recruit them anywhere. So they're definitely a valuable addition to my forces, and I will be using them quite a bit. They have good morale, great defense due to their shield, and their attack skill is really good. 9 hit points though, but remember with my bless, that boosts it up to 15, because I have a 6 hit point bless. Then we have the Cataphractoi. This is the precursor to the Western European Knight. The picture doesn't really do it justice. If you look up some actual Byzantine cataphracts, the horse is covered in scale barding, so the neck is covered, and it goes all the way down to right above the hooves. It's like it's wearing a giant skirt. And the rider is wearing a very similar type of outfit. They call it Llamalar. That's their style of armor. And it's basically sewn scales onto cotton. But there's probably no Llamalar in the Dominions game, so this is probably as close to a real cataphract as you can get within the confines of the game. It's pretty historical that their move is not that good, because again, they're weighed down by all this heavy armor. But they carried a mace into battle, which is great. They did not typically use a lance, but it does increase the versatility of this cavalry unit in the game, because the lance is that initial tough attack, then the hoof of the horse. A very solid and great unit that I believe is recruitable anywhere, so it is going to be the mainstay of my flanking force. Then we have the Verdarioti, and please, by all means, correct my pronunciations in the comments, but do so, how do I put this? Do so as you would to a 5-year-old. So like, give me examples of sounds that represent the sounds you're trying. I don't understand phonetics. I don't understand the phonetic alphabet, so just give me examples. Like, it's A as in cat, not A as in hay. You know, just something like that, so that I understand what you're going for. Give me example words. And these are basically horse archers. They were incredibly used in real life with the Byzantine field armies, as they were, especially because they learned it from fighting the Easterners. I don't know if I'm going to be using them much, though, because of this guy right here, the Akratoi, who is a standing archer who's amazing, range 35, 11 attack piercing, and a war mace. Really decent stats, above average defense, above average precision, great protection. The negative to these guys is they have limited recruitment. I believe you can only have 5 of them a turn, but they are recruitable anywhere, so as I get more forts up, I can have more of them running around. So that's... oh, we still have more. Still have more. We have the Varangian Guard, which are a bodyguard unit, much like... remember in campaign, the one unit, they have a bonus. They're more likely to show up in an assassination attempt, basically. And they are otherwise really awesome heavy infantry. These guys do have the two-handed battle axe, so maybe Burnsaber was just going for having the commander be a bit more elite with the dual-wielding axes. But these are true to form to the historical Varangians. They typically wore amazing armor because the Emperor funded them personally and gave them their pick of the Imperial Treasury armor. So they generally have amazing protection, but low defense due to the fact that they have a two-handed weapon. They did carry a shield, but they slung it over their back. in combat, since they charged with the two-handed battle axe. They were mostly used to scare the hell out of enemy troops and break heavy infantry formations. And the stats reflect that. They're an elite unit. I'll be recruiting a ton of them. But they are unfortunately capital only, so I won't be recruiting a lot of them at the beginning, but once I have more forts where I can recruit my basic troops, then I'll be getting more of these guys here in the capital. Finally, we have a very niche unit called the Pyrote. The Pyrote is an interesting guy, and I will be using them, but I may decide not to later. It depends on how they work out. They have a pyrostaff. This is made to basically approximate Greek fire, which during the medieval period was something that the Byzantines had to themselves. No other nation knew how to make it, and it enabled them to win a lot of naval battles they otherwise wouldn't be able to, and it made them very formidable. In this game, it is used kind of like a flamethrower, and that's very similar to how medieval Total War utilized them in the Crusades campaign. The sources are kind of mixed on this. Did it exist where you had individual men with these things? Some sources say yes. I'm going to say they probably did, but they probably weren't very widely used because the material itself was so secretive that you wouldn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. But the way it works in the game is that it is an armor-piercing area of effect of 2. Now, think about this for a second. 2 means it's 2 squares from the person shooting it. That includes the squares behind them and around them, and the square that the wielder is in. So this has just as much of a chance. I believe it's some like 1 in 8. 1 in 8 chance of killing the wielder. So, and any troops that share the same square as the wielder. So it's a very dangerous weapon that has poor precision, as you can see, and it'd be fun to look at, but it might, again, cause some problems with my own people. So, I wonder if these guys are also slow to recruit. No, I guess you can... No, I don't think so. Like, these guys say max 5 a month, these guys don't. So I guess you can recruit as many of them as you want, but again, only in the capital province. So, alright. That was a long explanation. There's a lot of units here, are very cool. What do I want to start with, though? I already have a commander to start with. I already have a scout. I think what I really want to start doing right now is getting my research going. And I'm going to leave him as whoever he comes out as. Nobody really wants to be a researcher. Everybody wants to be somebody who's going out into battle. So unless that changes, I'll just keep the name that he is given. In the meantime, I'm going to recruit as many of my Vestals as I can, 7, due to the holy points. And in addition to them, I will recruit my basic Velites just to fill out my armies. Well, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Because resources right now are my limiting factor and not gold. So, and all these guys cost more resources. This is 10, 20, 21, 21, 29. So the only thing that takes less resources than these guys are the Vestals, which I have as many as I can, and the Slingers, which I don't really want because they're terrible. So that is that. Alright, well, unfortunately this has already gone about a half hour, so I'm going to call this the end of the episode. I still want to talk about the Byzantine Empire, but for right now this is good. I will try to record another episode today so that you can see some gameplay today instead of having to wait another day for that. And thank you so much again for watching. Have a good one, everyone.